Hello, we're going to review writing equations of lines. Remember that we have slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, and we have hk form, which is y equals mx minus h plus k. And I'm going to show you another form, point-slope form, and that looks like this, where I have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And it's very similar to hk form, and I will show you later how to use that. All of these we can use to write equations of lines. So let's look at this first example. Notice that I'm given a graph, and in the graph I can see very clearly that this is my y-intercept. And if I know that I have my y-intercept, that's like your b. So whenever you have your y-intercept, use y equals mx plus b. That's going to be the easiest form to use. So use this if you know the y-intercept. Okay? Now, from the graph, you have to count to find your slope. So we have a point here. Let's pick another point on our graph, and I'm going to count my rise over run. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. So I went down 3. Remember that down is a negative direction. Both down and left are negative directions. And then I still haven't reached my point. I have to go to the right 2. So I have to go right 1, 2. That's a positive 2. So my rise over run is equal to negative 3 over positive 2. So we're going to write those values over here. We know that my m, my slope, my rise over run, is negative 3 over 2. And the b value is my y-intercept, which is 1. So all I have to do is plug that into the y equals mx plus b equation, so that I get y equals negative 3 halves x plus 1. Now let's look at what do we do if we are given a slope and a point. So we can use either hk form or point slope form. From Algebra 1, you are used to the hk form. And remember, that looks like this, like it says up above. And if you're given a point, that point is going to be your h and your k. So here our point is 2, 1, and that is our h and our k. And it gives us the slope as well, and that's going to be the m. So all I'm going to do is plug those in to my hk form. So that would be 2 for the m, parentheses, x minus 2. Remember that you're always doing opposite of h inside those parentheses. And then I'm doing plus k, so that would be plus 1. Now, normally in Algebra 1 we would say that's fine, you can leave that, but sometimes we had you write it in slope-intercept form. Let's get in the habit of doing that. So we're going to continue on with this and make it look like y equals mx plus b. So if I do that, all I have to do is distribute. So I'm doing 2x, and then 2 times negative 2 is 4. And then I just bring down my plus 1. So that just came right down. And we have to combine like terms. So if I do that, I still have 2x, but negative 4 plus 1 would give me negative 3. And this is in slope-intercept form. So this is what I'm going to be looking for, since you might be using different forms. We all want to get the same answer in the end. Now let me show you how to use the new one, point-slope form. So point-slope form, that's the one above that looks like this, y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Now your point that they gave you, the point 2, 1, instead of that being h and k, that's going to be x1, y1. Okay, kind of like when you do your slope formula. And then our m is still 2. So I'm going to be plugging in this point here and here. So those numbers are going to go in those spots. So when I plug that in, this is what it looks like. I just have y, but here I'm going to do minus my y coordinate, so that's 1. And that's going to be equal to 2 parentheses x minus my x coordinate, which is 2. So we want to make sure that we have the same answer as before, so we're going to distribute just like we did with HK form. So I'm going to distribute this 2. Okay, over here I still have y minus 1, but here I'm going to have 2x minus 4, and I want to get y all by itself, so I want to add that 1 so it cancels, and that's going to add over there with the like term over there. So I'm going to just have, when those cancel, I'm just going to have y over here, and on the right hand side I'm going to have 2x, and then if I combine these together, negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. And we get the same answer as we did with h and k. So in our next example, we are given 2 points. So we first have to find the slope. You always need to know what your slope is. So remember that our slope formula looks like this: y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And they're labeling, this is our x1, y1, and this is our x2, y2. Remember, it doesn't matter which one you call it, but just pick one and label it that way. So when I plug those in, y2, here's my formula, y2 is negative 3, and then I have to subtract my y1, which is 1. And then x2 is positive 2, and I have to subtract the x1, which is 3. So now that I have those plugged into the formula, we're going to simplify. Negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4, and then 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And you always want to reduce, so negative 4 divided by negative 1 is going to give me a positive 4. So we had to do all of that so we know what our m is. So we're going to keep that in mind when we use our forms. In this one first, I'm going to use the point slope form. So I'm using this new form. I know what the m is, and remember we're using x1 and y1. So we labeled the point 3, 1 as x1 and y1. So I'm going to be plugging those values in for x1 and y1, and I'm going to be plugging in m equals 4 into there. So let's do that. I would get y minus, my y1 is 1, equals m is 4, parentheses x minus 3, and then we're going to distribute. So I get y minus 1, remember it doesn't change over here yet, but over here I get 4x minus 12, and then I want to get y by itself over here, so I'm going to add 1 on both sides. And that's going to give me y equals 4x minus 11. So that would be my equation. Now, if you want to do this in HK form, I'll show you how to do that. If not, you can just fast forward to the next example. So HK form, remember, is y equals m parentheses x minus h plus k. And my HK is that 3, 1. So that's my h, and this is my k. Remember, 4 is still the m. So when I do this, I'm going to have y equals m is 4 from right there above. Then I have x minus h, that's x minus 3, and then plus 1. Now we distribute. So if I distribute, I get y equals 4x minus 12, and then I bring down the plus 1, and then make sure to combine those like terms. And that's going to give me y equals 4x minus 11, and we get the same thing. So either one, HK form or point slope form, you can use to write those equations of lines. Now let's talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. Remember last time we talked about parallel lines have the same slope, and perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So something that might help you see a visual for slopes for parallel and perpendicular lines. Let's say m is my original slope, and that's equal to some number divided by another number, a over b. Well, if I want a slope that's parallel, that's the line symbol for parallel, then it's going to be the exact same thing. But if I want a slope that's perpendicular, I need to flip the fraction around and change the sign. So if this is positive AB, I want it to be negative B over A. That would be the perpendicular slope. All right, so let's do this example. We have two different parts to this. We have to find a line that's parallel to that and perpendicular. So we're going to do parallel over here. And then second, I'll do perpendicular over here. Okay. So first we need to know, what is our original slope? Well, it says that the original line is negative 2x plus 3. So our original m comes right here in the mx plus b part. So that's our m. M is negative 2. And then they gave us this point. That's going to be our h comma k. I'm going to use hk for both of these. All right, so if I'm using hk, I know that for my parallel line, I want the m to be exactly the same as the original, so that's negative 2. And then I'm using this formula. Okay, that's the hk form. So I'm plugging in negative 2 for m, and then h is negative 1. So when I do minus a negative 1, remember that changes to be positive. So here, minus a negative 1, I'm going to rewrite that as x plus 1. Remember, the k does not change. So if you wanted to go right to x plus 1, that would be fine. Just make sure whichever way you do it, the number inside the parentheses is always opposite of h. Okay? So if I distribute, I get negative 2x minus 2. Bring down the plus 1. Combine those like terms. And I get y equals negative 2x minus 1. That is my equation of the line that is parallel to that line. Now for perpendicular, my slope has to be the opposite reciprocal. So I have to do the opposite sign. So my original slope is negative, so this needs to be positive. And remember, this slope is negative 2 over 1, so I need to flip that fraction around. So that's going to be positive 1 over 2. So look at that, make sure you understand why that slope is positive 1 over 2. Then we're going to go back, use the same h and k. Remember, h and k is that negative 1 comma 1. And we're plugging that into the hk formula. Okay. So let's do that. I'm going to have y equals, my slope now is 1/2. Then I'm going to have x minus a negative 1. I'm going to go straight to just writing plus 1, since we already talked about why minus negative is the same thing as positive. And then I have plus 1 for my k. Now I'm going to distribute. Don't let that fraction intimidate you. Use a calculator if you're unsure. But if I do 1/2 times x, that's just 1/2 x. 1/2 times 1, remember anything times 1 is itself, so that's just going to be a half. And then I'm going to bring down that plus 1. Now when I combine these two things together, 1/2 plus 1, you can write that a few different ways. So I have 1/2 x. 1 plus a half is 1.5. But I would prefer that you write it either as 1.5, so like as a decimal, or as a mixed number, so 1/2 x plus 3/2. Okay? So let's get in the habit of doing improper fractions like 3/2, or you can do decimals. And that would be the equation of the perpendicular line.